Hello. Hi everyone. Good morning. As part of the today's lecture, we are gonna study the various features that a Karate UI automation is supporting. So the first and a foremost thing is in order to work on this Karate UI automation, you can write down a Cucumber feature files which internally uses the Jerkin syntaxes, which means that you can write down a feature file followed by a scenario and you can use a given when then keywords inside it. So in order to write down this UI automation, you don't need any programming language. If you don't have any programming language, then this is going to be the best tool. If you compare it with the Selenium, almost all the features, whatever the Selenium is supporting, this Karate is supporting. The major difference on a high level, if you can consider, to work on Selenium, you need any programming languages, whereas for this Karate, without having any programming knowledge background, we can easily play with this tool. If you want to study more about this tool, the best suggested source is their official website itself. In their official website, they have given in-depth details about each and every feature, whatever they are supporting for this particular tool. And moreover, this Karate internally uses Selenium to work on any web applications. And this Karate uses W3C protocol in order to interact with the web application. And it supports all the browsers like IE, Firefox, Chrome, Safari, Edge. All the browsers were supported by default in this Karate framework. And it has almost all the features, whatever we have in our Selenium code. And additionally, this Karate supports parallel execution. By default, HTML execution reports will be generated, and even visual testing is also supported in this Karate framework. And the major beauty with this particular one is I can create a feature file in which I can write down a few lines on an API and I can write a few lines on a web also. The mix of API and as well as a web will be supported by this Karate framework. These are all the various features on a high level. Moving further, we are going to study practical implementation like how to configure this particular tool and the bunch of examples on that particular tool we are going to study moving further. Stay tuned. Wish you good luck. Bye-bye. Hello. Hi everyone, good morning. As part of the today's lecture, we are going to study what is the configuration that it is required for us to work on this UI automation testing. If you have already worked on Selenium or Karate API testing in your machine, then your system is up and good enough for us to work on a UI automation testing also. You no need to do any configuration explicitly. But if you haven't done any automation testing in your machine, then these are the things that you need to download. You need to download Java 8 or above. Recently, you can download a Java 17 or Java 20th, whichever it might be, download it and install it. Okay, once after you download it and you install Java, then you need an editor in order to write down your source code. Right, we need an editor in order to write down our source code. The basic editor that we are using here in order to write down our source code is Eclipse editor. So you can download an Eclipse editor to your machine and you need to download and install Maven to your machine. Apart from that, for your Eclipse editor, you need to install a Cucumber Naturals plugin so that the Cucumber feature files, whatever you are creating, would be of a proper syntax. That's the only thing that you need to do. Apart from that, in your Eclipse editor, you can create a Maven project. So considering that these are the basic prerequisites that everyone has already installed in your machine, I'm directly going to my Eclipse editor and I'm creating a Maven project for my Karate framework. So go to Eclipse editor, file, new, others, and here I'm choosing a Maven based project. So this is the Maven project that I'm choosing right now. And then once after we got all the catalogs here, okay, so all the artifacts IDs, whatever we got, then we can search for Karate from this. Okay, whenever you search for Karate, automatically whichever the things that are related to Karate will be populated. See here, com.int.karate, which is a Karate 1.4.0. That's fine. I'm choosing this next button. And then after choosing using that, give a group ID. So com.scripts, and I'm naming a artifact ID as a Karate UI, which itself means I'm giving my project name as a Karate UI. As in when you clicked on that particular finish, automatically a new Java-based or a Maven project got created. So it's downloading all the artifacts, or I can say it's downloading all the jar files. So, it's creating a Maven-based project. Still, the percentage is a 10% itself. Okay, the percentage of a completion is a 10% itself. So I'm going to ambientrepository.com and I'm searching for karate. So for this karate, you have a karate core, karate Apache, karate JUnit 4 or a JUnit 5. You can choose either of these things, JUnit 4 or a JUnit 5. So I'll be choosing karate core, Apache, and a JUnit 4. All these three things. I just want to do only these three things itself. It's creating a Maven-based project. It will take some time. Usually, a question that comes in our mind, Surendra, can't I create a Java project and directly manage my dependencies? Of course, you can create a Java project, or you can also create this karate project. So whenever you have created this karate project, what it will happen means, if you see the folder structure, a sample feature file, a sample runner class, a karate configuration file, everything will be auto populated. And whenever you created a Java class, you won't get that. A Java project, you won't get that information. That's the reason, go with this particular version itself, or go with this particular Eclipse editor creation of a karate project directly, rather than going with a normal chunk. That's fine. And as it is a Maven based project, in the pom.xml, it has a dependencies where in which whatever the dependencies you have specified, it will download all the dependencies from the Maven central repository. So here, let me go to karate core first. And the karate core version here is 1.4, 1.1, and 0.96. So let me open this 0.96. I'll show you the reason why I'm opening with the 0.96. Surendra, why can't you go with any other versions? So come back to this karate. Let me open this Apache. This Apache is having a 0.96 version. That's the reason, to maintain everything in a stable pace. That's the reason I'm going with Karate Core as a 0.96 and Karate Apache also as a 0.96. Copy this version, the dependency content completely, paste it in the dependency. I placed a Karate Apache, and now I need to place the content of a Karate Core, and then we need to place the content of karate JUnit, whether it is a JUnit 4 or a JUnit 5. In the current situation, I'm going with the JUnit 4 itself. And here also, as I have a Apache and a core on a 0.96 versions, so I'm going with this as a 0.96 version itself. Copy this and update this particular thing. So whenever I have updated this instance, it's trying to download the complete jar files. Okay, whichever the dependencies are there, it's trying to download all the dependencies into this particular machine. Okay, it's trying to download all the dependencies into this machine. Perfect. So the runner class, it's getting failed. The reason is, by default, the karate runner was on a JUnit 5. And we removed that JUnit 5 and we placed JUnit 4. So let me delete this content. Let me delete this import file. Perfect. And now if you open the feature file which it was created, see, basically it has the API related URLs. See, basically it has the API related URLs. Okay, that's fine. With which I can say that, okay, so the complete karate configuration is done. So guys, if you don't have a Java installed, download, go to Java official website, download Java 17 and download Eclipse editor. And on top of the Eclipse editor, install a Cucumber Naturals plugin to your editor, and then follow this particular step that we have seen right now. And this test is getting failed. Again, this is on a JUnit 5. Hence, I am deleting the JUnit 5 related information from my project. Then immediately a question that comes in your mind, Surendra, how are you going to execute it? You removed the content from the runner class. That we will see moving ahead. As of now in the session, we have seen a configuration. Moving ahead, we will see how exactly we can create a program and how exactly we can run a basic program. That we will see moving ahead. Let's do it in the next session. Okay, good enough. Done the deal. See you again in the next session. Thank you. Bye. Hello. Hi everyone, welcome back. As part of the today's session, let us see how exactly we can write down a simple program for this Karate UI automation and check out how exactly it's executing. Okay, a basic script creation and an execution part we are gonna study as part of the today's lecture. For which, what I'm doing means I'm opening my Eclipse editor and within the same package, let me create a new feature file for me. Okay, so here I'm choosing a file option and demo feature one or demo UI one dot feature. Okay, I have created a demo UI one dot feature and these many contents it got created. I don't want all these things. I'm just deleting this information. I don't want this complete chunk. Hence, I'm deleting this whole details. I don't want all these details. Okay, and the feature file validating UI browser launch. Okay, validating UI browser launch. Open lebby.com on the browser. Okay, and I don't want all these things. So in order to write down the Karate UI syntax, for which what I'm doing right now means I'm navigating to this Karate official documentation here. And if you see right now, the syntax they have given is given driver followed by your application URL and input and click, then wait for URL. As of now, I don't know what exactly the input is, the click is, wait for URL is. We don't know all these things. But right now, what I'm doing right now means given driver is that particular URL. So here given driver space that application URL HTTP. So I'm just giving the application URL lebby.com. That's it. I have given this application URL. As per the program they have defined, I haven't written anything else. I'm just defining only this browser URL itself. Okay, now right click on your feature file. You do have an option which is run as a cucumber feature. You can use this run as a cucumber feature. And guys, if you are having an idea on API testing or a cucumber BDD, you can understand what is the feature scenario given and all those things. If you don't have any idea, kindly refer to the cucumber videos which we have to get some insights about what exactly this feature is, scenario given, when, then, and all these notations. But for now, I'm using a cucumber feature and let me try to run it and see what it is happening. So some log is being generated. See, if you observe, a Chrome browser is launched. It's trying to launch a Chrome browser. See, a Chrome browser was launched. But on this Chrome browser, it's trying to perform some operations and nothing got performed here on this particular Chrome browser. There is a version compatibility issue because of which it was unable to execute this particular scenario. Okay, the browser is being launched and in which it's unable to interact with that particular browser. So there is an invalid handshake response that we got from the browser. So how are we going to deal with it? So by default, as per the documentation, if you give like this, automatically it will launch a browser. But for us, in the current situation, whenever I am creating an instance to the driver, I'm getting the issue. That's the reason. In the configuration, click on the driver. Let us see that information that you have on this particular driver. So in this particular driver, they have given some details. Given driver with respect to this particular URL, it's gonna open it. So what I'm doing right now means, let us go to the configure driver. So this is the configure driver. So when can you go to the configure driver means, I want to launch my browser explicitly. In such a cases, I can go with this configure driver. Okay, so when can we go for this configuration? If I want to configure my browser explicitly. So here, what I'm doing means given, and I'm doing a configure. See here, configure driver is equal to open bracket and a close the bracket. So here they have a given type as a Chrome. You need to give type as a Chrome. And for that particular Chrome, you can also pass the executable file. If you are using a Mac machine, here is the location for your executable file. If you are using a Windows machine, here is the default location for this executable file. It's not mandatory to pass this executable file. You can ignore it. And if you scroll down a bit, here they have a given a table wise metrics or a data, what exactly you can do a configuration level. So I can pass on a type. Type means what exactly the browser that we are targeting for. See, if you see these drivers type, I just opened it in a new tab, the drivers type. So it supports the Chrome browser, Chrome driver, Gecko driver, Safari driver, MS Edge driver. These are all the various drivers that it's gonna support. So what I'm doing right now means, as per my current execution, I'm targeting for Chrome. That's the reason I'm defining type colon space Chrome. I have a defined this particular Chrome. Okay, explicitly I have a defined this particular Chrome, and let me try to run it again and see what it's gonna happen. So you have a just specified a Chrome, and this Chrome is trying to interact with the 9222 port. Okay, so it's trying to interact with the 9222 port. That's what it's trying to interact. Okay, and if you see right now, again it got a failed, and the same the socket hang up issue, which is a 403 forbidden error. And whenever you are working on, and whenever you are encountering this 403 forbidden, in such a cases, you need to add options to your browser. Okay, I need to add options to my browser. What exactly the options that I want to add? I want to add the remote allow origins capability is equal to, I want to allow this one to start. That's it. So whenever you are encountering these types of, okay, the protocol handshake and 403 forbidden, you need to add an option which is remote allow origins. Let me try to run this script again and see upon adding this particular one. Run as this particular thing. Now, okay, now it's trying to launch the Chrome browser. See, the Chrome browser was launched again, and let us see whether it is performing the operations or not. Still, it doesn't perform the operations. Now, what I'm doing means, let me kill my Chrome browser, and here by default, the Chrome browser is going on a 9222 port number. Okay, the Chrome is going on a 9222 port number. Okay, so what I'm gonna do right now is, see here, the Chrome is launching on a 9222 port number. So what I'm gonna do right now is, let me change that particular port. Okay, let me change that particular port. So here I'm doing comma, and I'm adding a port, and the port that I want to run is 1234 is the port that I want to run with. Okay, 1234 is the port that I want to run with. That's it. So these are the things that you need to specify. Okay, these are the things that you need to specify. Let me save it and let me try to run this feature file again and see whether it is working or not. So it's trying to establish a connection with this particular 1234 port on a Chrome browser, and the Chrome browser was launched, and now it should establish a connection with that particular application. See, now it's trying to open up that URL. See, the URL got opened and it terminated the browser instance also. See, explicitly, you no need to use any command to terminate the browser instance here. Automatically, the browser instance will be killed. So that's the reason what I'm gonna do right now means then delay of 2000 milliseconds. I just want to add some delay here so that I want to see how exactly it's happening. So right now, let me change it to 8 or a 9. So I have a given 8 or a 9. And as we have studied with respect to the features, whenever the script got executed, automatically the execution report is being generated. Automatically, a report is being generated. You can find that particular report within the target itself. Let us refresh the target. And if you go to the Surefire plugin, so karate summary.html, I'm opening with a system editor to see that particular report. See, validating the UI features. And if I open that particular content, it's tried to open that, failed to get the reply. So there is an issue with that application. That's the reason there was an issue. So here, what I'm doing right now means I'm trying to open a bing.com. And let me try to run this program and see how this is going to work. Run as a Cucumber feature file this time, and let us see right now. So the port number is changed. The by default port number is a 9222. And you may ask a question, Surendra, how would you know the by default port is a 9222 and how you changed that particular port? Let me show you a simple point. Okay, it opened the bing.com. It's waiting for few seconds that we have a given. So we have a given around 8 seconds, and then it terminated that browser. We have already opened the report, and if you refresh it, see, basically the application got opened and it terminated that particular chunk too. Okay, and it terminated that particular chunk too. Let us open this particular browser, and if you see the documentation, whenever you use a Chrome, by default it's gonna launch it on a 9222 port. On a 9222 port itself, it's gonna establish a connection. With this point, I can confirm that I was able to create a program, and I was able to launch the application, and I was able to wait for a few seconds, and I can terminate it. The only thing that you need to use is a driver directly. Given driver, automatically the application URL you can specify, it will open. And in my instance, I'm having an issue with respect to the browser versions. That's the reason I'm using in this particular way. Now, what I'm going to do right now here is, let me comment this particular line. Let me try to change it to a Safari and check whether it is working or not. Given configure driver is equal to, again, I need to specify the type of the driver, the type Safari driver. I am on a Mac machine, hence I am specifying the Safari driver. To cross check whether the Safari driver is there or not, here if you can see the Safari driver is there in this particular list, and the default port is 445. Now let me try to run the script, and this time it should open a Safari browser in which the bing.com application should be launched. Okay, and there was an issue with this Safari browser. Okay, so let me refresh the report. It shouldn't be an issue, but anyways, let me refresh the report. So here, session not created. You must enable allow remote automation in the Safari tools. Okay, so this is the syntax that it is looking for. For this Safari, type as a Safari driver. See here, type as a Safari driver followed by the target is a null. So we are passing target as a null, and it is not allowing it. Okay, so it's asking you must enable allow remote automation on this particular Safari browser. Let me try to run this script. Even we need to configure this Safari browser here. Let us see how exactly we can do this Safari configuration. Study a bit more on this error message to understand more. If you see right now, guys, could not create a session, you must enable allow automation option in Safari developer menu. Basically, this is a restriction from a Safari browser, not from an automation perspective. This is restriction from an Safari browser itself. So what I'm doing right now means, let me open the Safari, go to the preferences, and in the advanced tab, there is a developer menu. Okay, select this developer menu, hence this developer menu got highlighted. And in this developer menu, if you scroll down, allowed remote automation option is there. Just enable it. Okay, just enable it. That's what it is asking. You must enable allow remote option in a developer options. That's what I have enabled right now. Let me come back to my program and let me kill my Safari browser and let me try to run this program and see whether it is working or not. So run as. So this time it's using a default port and it established a connection with your Safari browser, and the browser got launched and waited for a few seconds and it terminated the browser. And the most important thing that we need to consider here is analyzing the error messages is the key thing for us. By looking into the error messages, you can get a more insights, and just by exploring that particular error messages itself, you can clearly handle the various issues. So this is the way how exactly you can create a basic program that launches a browser, and in the browser, it will open that particular application. Perfect. Done the deal. See you again in the next session. Thank you. Hello. Morning. So guys, if you remember, as part of the previous session, we have created a simple program that launches a browser, and on that particular browser, it opens a particular application. In general, in any kind of a web applications, our next steps are, after opening the application, we need to perform operations on the browser. Like maybe if I opened a bing.com, I need to perform a search operation. If I open any application, I need to perform a login operation. These are the various operations that we need to perform. So in general, in any kind of a web automation, the next step after opening the application is interacting with the UI elements. Whatever the UI elements are there in a particular web page, interacting with that particular UI elements is gonna be our key point here. So there is a certain mechanism using which you can interact with any particular UI applications. The first and foremost thing that we need to consider here is each and every object or anything that it is displaying on a browser, we treat it as an object, like a link, a text field, an image, a radio button, checkbox, whatnot, drop down. Anything that it is displaying on a browser, our automation tool will consider it as an object, and developer, while developing the application, they will assign unique attributes to those particular objects. Attributes to those objects. So consider a simple example here. So guys, if you clearly observe, we are deep diving into the locators concept. The reason is you have studied about API testing, and I'm assuming that you don't have any idea on what exactly the locators is, what is an attribute type, and what is an attribute value. That's the reason I'm just explaining it for a few minutes here. Consider that I want to identify a person in a grade A. If I want to identify a person in a grade A, the grade A has around 20 students are there. So definitely I should have a unique property, which is a name. We call it as an attribute. For this name attribute, there will be a attribute value. The value itself means, so the name, maybe I'm considering the name as a Ramya. So name, we call it as an attribute type, and the attribute value is Ramya. Maybe the another attribute, first name, is an, okay, the first name is an attribute type, and the answer for this one is attribute value. The same way, the second name, the middle name, father name, all these things are attribute types. Whatever the value that you are assigning is going to be an attribute values. Okay, for every attribute you need to give an unique values, or you need to give a value, and then that's the person responsibility with all these attributes. He need to identify a unique person and he need to give that money or something else. The similar way, developer while developing any kind of a web applications, they will assign a different kinds of attributes like ID, name, class, link text, okay, different sets of attributes to any object that it is displaying on a browser. We as an automation tester needs to identify the unique attributes and we need to perform the operations there. Okay, we need to identify unique attributes and we need to give those attributes in your program. Okay, you need to give those attributes in your program so that your program can recognize it and it can interact with that particular object in the browser. In general, we can identify all these attributes within the browser itself. The only thing that you need to do is right click on your desired objects. Okay, whichever the object you want to perform, right click on that desired object, choose inspect. So in the current example, we have opened a bing.com. So let me open the same bing.com here for a reference. See, I'm opening a bing.com for our reference. On this bing.com, see, I want to interact with this text field. So right click on the text field and at last you can find an inspect option. So choose this inspect button. Whenever you choose an inspect button within the browser itself, you will get some HTML information. And within that HTML information, this info is in a grayed color, or I can say this is already in an highlighted mode. Okay, this is already in an highlighted mode. If you come here, this is in an highlighted mode. And it has, if you observe, the text area right after this particular symbol. Okay, so right after this symbol, whichever the name we have, we call it as an HTML tag name for that particular object. Okay, HTML tag name for that particular object. So this object has a text area tag name. ID, left hand side is an attribute and right hand side is a value that it is placed in the double quotes. So it means ID is an attribute and it has a value too. Class is an attribute and it has a value too. Name is an attribute and it has a value. Type is an attribute and it has a value. Input mode, like that. There are a different sets of attributes are there. And for each and every attribute, there is a value. So we as an automation tester needs to identify unique attributes and interact with the object. You need to identify the unique attributes and you need to interact with that particular object. That's what the most important thing that we need to consider. So if you observe right now, this object has an ID and it is having some value. That's fine. So I understood up to here. Now I'm going to the Karate official documentation. And here there is an index section in which I'm going with the locator types. Locator types. If I selected that, it moved to that locators. And if I scroll down, the object that we have is having an ID property. And whenever that object is having an ID property, you can use a hash followed by that particular name. You can use it. This ID, you can use it for Windows, Android, and an iOS. This is what they have given. So if you have an ID, before that ID, you need to add a hash prior to that so that your Karate can perform that operation on that particular object. So here, what I want to do right now, I want to enter a value into a text field. In order to enter a value into a text field, the respective method that we are gonna use is an input. Input is a method that we are gonna use here in order to enter a value. So here, instead of 8, I'm changing it to delay 5. And then the method that I'm gonna use is an input. And for this particular input, we need to pass a two arguments. Okay, we need to pass a two arguments, whether I can pass it in a double quote or the second argument in a single quote. So what is the first argument that we need to pass? The locator. On which locator you want to perform the operation and what is the data that you want to enter. Let's go back to the browser once. And I noticed that this object is having an ID. Select it, copy that ID value, come back to the documentation. Before the ID, you need to give a hash, like a hash followed by that locator name we need to give. So here hash followed by that name we have a given, and the value that I want to enter here is my name. Consider that I have entered my name. And after entering my name, I want to wait for, okay, I want to wait for around 5 seconds to check whether the action is performing or not. So I haven't created any new script here, guys. Whichever the earlier program is there, I was just using that earlier program itself. And for that earlier program, I'm just entering a value to a text field by using an input method and by using an ID attribute. Okay, let me go to this feature file and we know how to run it. Right click on it, run as a Cucumber feature. So I'm just trying to execute it, let us say, and this should launch a, which browser? The Safari browser. And it should enter a value into that Safari browser. Let's see. We are waiting for about a 5 seconds there, and then it entered my name successfully without having any issues. So in this lecture, so let me comment out this Safari and let me uncomment this Chrome and let me try to run the program as well. Let us see how it's gonna work. So here I'm trying to execute it. So this time it should launch a Chrome browser in which it should open an application and then it should enter Surendra into that particular field. Okay, it should enter Surendra into that particular field. It opened and it's waiting for a few seconds and then it should enter Surendra Jagannatham into this particular field. That's it. The same script, there is no change here. Whatever the script that you have created in Safari, we were just executing it here on an Chrome browser. The execution wise, everything is one and the same. It entered and after a few seconds, it will terminate the instance. So this is the way. How can you identify an ID? An object, if it is having an ID, how exactly you can identify it and you can perform an operation. So this is the basic thing. And there are a couple more locators are there. If you see, if there is a name attribute for that object, you no need to add any prefix to that. Nothing can be added. You no need to add anything if there is a name attribute. Let's come back here. And if you see, this object is having a name also. Let's copy this name attribute and then go back to the program. Here, let me comment this line. Okay, and then let us create a new line here. Then inputs, and this time I'm using a name attribute, comma, I'm using Libby. Okay, I'm using Libby. So it should be maintaining in a single quote, hence I have updated this. And I somehow felt that on a Mac, a Safari execution is a bit faster. Hence I have uncommented the code related to Safari and I'm trying to execute it. Run as a Java application. So run as a Cucumber feature file. It's getting executed. So it should enter Libby into that particular field. It's waiting for a few seconds right now, and then it will enter that particular value too. That's it. So this is the way how exactly you can perform this particular operation. Okay, this is the way how exactly you can perform that operation. I think there is an issue here. Okay, let me refresh the report and see. Error, no such element. It's unable to identify an object using this name attribute. Okay, so the syntax is one and the same. Let us cross-check the syntax in the documentation. If it is having a name, nothing is given. See, directly the submit should be given. Directly the same thing that I have given here also. Let me try one more time and see whether it is working or not. So we have just followed the same syntax. We haven't done anything. Whatever the syntax they have given as per the official documentation itself, we were just referring to the same syntax itself. Okay, we are just referring to the same syntax and we were just implementing it. Okay, so still we are getting a no such element exception. Okay, but for a name attribute, okay, if an object, the name attribute you have to give, nothing should be given, directly name should be given. Okay, so let us see this a name with a different application as an example. I just want to cross check why it is not working. sourcedemo.com. So this is the application that we usually use for our web applications. So I'm just picking up this as a scenario. Now right click, inspect, and it has a name attribute. Come back to the code. It has a name attribute and I want to change the URL to sourcedemo.com and update this URL and let us cross check. Okay, input is the method, this is the username, and this is the value that I want to enter. Let me try to run. So we are just following the syntax itself. We are not doing anything else. Yeah, let's see one more time whether it is working with the name or not. Okay. So still we are getting a no such element exception. Okay, the element is not recognizing. So it has an ID. Let me try to do these things. So here I will try to append a hash prior to that and see at least whether it is identifying using ID or not. Run as a Cucumber feature file this time. Let's see. The Cucumber is launching and it's waiting for a few seconds and it's entering. So there is an issue with the name attribute. It's not identifying the name attribute. We will see moving further with the different examples on a name and see why it is not working. Okay, for now, let us consider this particular, okay, let us consider this particular object, which is a ID attribute itself in this example. Good enough, done the deal. Let us continue the topic as part of the next session. Thank you. Everyone, welcome back. As part of the today's lecture, again, we will continue some more examples on these locators concept. Okay, some more examples on these locators concept. If you go back, these are the various locators that are supported by our Karate framework. And they have given an example on a CSS selector and as well as an Xpath. These are the first two locators they have given. So one is a CSS selector and the second one is an Xpath. They have defined some syntaxes out over there. We will study. And we have and locators if at all any object is having some text and if I want to identify by its text, then these are some locators for the same. Okay, so in the today's session, we will focus on the XPath and a CSS. And in the next session, we will see how exactly we can identify an object by using its text. Okay, fine. So immediately a question that comes in our mind. Surendra, we were able to identify an object by its ID property, right? By using its ID property. Why we need to use either CSS or an XPath? See, in general, whenever we are working on any particular applications, if the desired object is not having any default locators, in such cases, we will use this XPath or CSS. So the XPath is having its unique syntax. So I will tell you the XPath syntax for a generic web application, and then we will see this syntax in how are we going to utilize it in our Karate framework too. // okay, // HTML tag name, open braces, @attribute type is equal to. In the single quotes, you need to specify the attribute value. Whatever the attribute type is there, you have to specify that value in the single quotes. So let us go to the browser once. We have a source demo application. Right click and inspect here. And it has a placeholder is an attribute. I want to write down an XPath. So here, copy the username value and it is a placeholder, right? Everything is in a lowercase. Let us go back to our document // what is the tag name? See, the tag name here is input. Right after that symbol, whichever the name is there, it's gonna be the tag name. So here I'm entering input, open braces, @placeholder is equal to. In the single quotes, you need to specify the syntax. Perfect. You have created an XPath. But how would we know whether it is a valid XPath or not? So the only thing is within the browser itself, whenever you are here, if you press a Control F, a finder will be opened. And if you write down your XPath, if it is a valid XPath, it will show up here. If it is an invalid XPath, also it will show up here. // it's an input. Open braces @placeholder is equal to. This should be placed within a single quotes. I just updated it. That's it. Okay. @placeholder is equal to. This is the one. So it's not a working. Okay. So what is the tag name here? See here, we have a place at this XPath, but still we are not getting it. Let's see. So what's wrong? // So you need to place 2 slashes here. // input @placeholder is equal to 1 So it means with the given locator, there is only one object and that object is highlighting in an yellow color. Now you have an XPath. Copy this XPath. Go to your Karate documentation. If at all, any object is having an XPath, you just need to place a slash. That's we have already added in a syntax. Directly, you can write it down the code. So what I'm doing right now means, let me go to my editor. Here, earlier we have created 3 different scenarios. Hence, I have marked it as 3 different scenarios here. Okay, I just kept it as 3 different scenarios. And right now I'm commenting everything. In order to comment, control !mark is the keyboard shortcut key that you can use it. Or what I'm doing right now means for these examples, let me create a new feature file. Okay, new file. I'm naming it as demo UI2.feature. Okay, demo UI2.feature, and I don't want all this content. Let me delete the whole content. Feature. What is the feature? Validate application behavior with various locators. And right now, the scenario using XPath. Given, when, then, all these are one and the same. So that's the reason. Whichever the scenario that you have created for this, I'm copying it and I'm placing here. So this scenario is navigating to the source demo application, where in which it's trying to enter here. So instead of this value, let us place this XPath. So here, this is what the XPath is. Copy the XPath from here, come back to the editor and place it here. This is what your XPath is. Okay, this is what your XPath is. Perfect. If you have any issues, place a double quote here. Instead of a single quotes, I kept a double quote. Now, let me run this feature file, run as a Cucumber feature. So it's getting executed. Let us see whether it is performing the operations there or not. So it was supposed to open the source demo application, and on that source demo application, it should enter a value. Okay, so on the source demo application, it should enter a value in the username text field. Let us see, we created an XPath and it worked successfully. So this is the way how exactly you can use an XPath. So as of now, we created an XPath for the username field. Let us create an XPath for the password field too. Even the password is having a placeholder. So //input open braces at the rate a placeholder is equal to. I was able to identify this locator. Copy this locator, go to your program here, then again, input. What is that input that you want to enter here? So this is the thing. This is what my locator is there. I want to enter the password. So on this application, they have given the user credentials. You can use this as a username and this as a password. They have clearly given those details. Copy the username, update the username. Okay, so copy the username, come back, update the username, copy the password and update the password too. Perfect. So we entered the username and as well as a password. After entering the username and a password, what is the next action that it is pending in order to log in into an application? You just need to click on that button. So right click, inspect, and it has a data test or a type. So let us take a data test and write down an XPath. So //input open braces at the rate data test is equal to, I have defined it. Oh, where is this locator? It wasn't pasted. Yes, that's it. I was able to identify the login button too. Come back. Then, so guys, what is the command that we need to use in order to click on a button? So you can use the click command here. Click and directly specify that locator. Whichever the locator is there, just to specify it. A click is a command that we need to use. Enter the username, enter the password, and click on that particular button. So in order to enter a value in a text field, we need to use an input. In order to click on any particular button, click is a command that we need to use. These two things we have learned. Let me run my program and see whether it is entering the username, entering the password, and clicking on a login button or not. Let us cross check. And guys, if you clearly observe, it's launching a browser, but it is not a full lengthy mode. It's in a minimized mode. We will see moving ahead in the upcoming lectures how exactly we can maximize the browser and how exactly we can keep the browser in a full screen also. That we will study moving ahead. So I entered the username, the program entered the password, and it clicked on a login button. That's the reason this screen got populated. Okay, that's the reason this screen got populated. Okay, so this is the way how exactly you can create a program to perform a login operation using its XPath. So right now, I'm copying this scenario from here. And the other feature file is there, right? I'm just placing this scenario here. So guys, I'm maintaining every feature file, whatever I have created in a demo user one dot feature. In demo two dot feature, I'm writing down the content and I'm switching back that content to the demo UI one dot feature. All these feature files I will be sharing you at the end. You can find it in a first lecture or a second lecture. We will place the lectures within the videos itself so that you can have an access to all the feature files that I'm creating within a session. Okay, that's fine. Perfectly all right. So I learned about an XPath and I have used it successfully. And if you compare the syntaxes between XPath and a CSS, see, this is what an XPath is. Okay, so this is what an XPath is. Let us put this particular XPath here. And let us put the syntax of a CSS too. So that will be easy for us to compare. Okay, above is XPath and below is CSS. What is the difference between XPath and a CSS? XPath has a 2 slashes which CSS don't have. That's fine. And then Xpath has an @ which CSS don't have. And on a right hand side, Xpath has a single quote which CSS don't have. So if I have an Xpath for a particular object, I can directly write down a CSS for the same object. See here, copy this Xpath. Let us put in this document. It shouldn't have these two slashes. That's fine. @ symbol shouldn't be there. And here, the single quotes shouldn't be there. If I'm comfortable with an Xpath, I can write down a CSS too. Perfectly all right. Let's come back here. I'm making a heading as using CSS selector, and here remove the two slashes, remove the @ and remove the single quote. All the 3 points I made a correction for the first object. I'm doing the same thing for the second object. Okay, I'm doing the same thing for the second object, and I'm repeating the same thing for the third object too. So here we learned about an XPath, and later we converted that XPath into a CSS selector too. Let me run my program and see this time using the CSS selector whether it is performing the operations or not. See, from a end user perspective, there won't be any difference. It's gonna go and interact with the browser itself. But internally, the mechanism earlier we used an XPath, and right now we are using a CSS selector. That's the basic difference. Apart from that, everything is gonna be one and the same itself. So it should open the application, it should enter the credentials, and should click on a login button like earlier. Perfect. The script got executed successfully. So this is the way how exactly we can use an XPath and a CSS as a locators. The next available locators is identifying by its link text. If at all any object is having a text, how are we gonna identify? That we will study as part of the next session. Thank you. Bye-bye.